Alrighty, so for example 7, we're going to find our function values of half angles when we're given information. So we are given what cosine S is. Cosine S is 2/3. We know S, the angle S itself, is in quadrant number 4. It's between 1.5 pi's and 2 pi's. So it is in quadrant 4. Let's find where our half angles for cosine, sine, and tangent are. Let's find those half angles. What I want to know too, though, is which quadrant are those half angles in? Which quadrant will they be in so I know the signs of my answers? So we're told that the angle is in quadrant 4. It's between these. Well, where's the half angles? So if we multiply everything by a half, so S times 1/2 is S halves. Multiply 3 pi over 2 by 1/2. So I'm going to get 3 pi over 4. Multiply 2 pi by 1/2 and I get pi. So what we see here is we are between 3/4 pi and pi. So we are right in this area right there, which our answers are going to be in quadrant 2. And what I know in quadrant 2, all students take calculus. In quadrant 2, my sine and my cosecant are positive. Cosine and tangent are going to be negative. So we are going to start by finding cosine of half S. All right, so we know cosine of half S is going to be plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine S all over 2. So, cosine S, I just wrote cosine. Alrighty, so we know what cosine S is. Cosine S is 2/3. We also know that we are going to be in quadrant number 2 where cosine is negative. So I'm not going to write the plus or minus anymore. I'm just going to keep the negative. So I am going to get the square root of 1 plus 2/3 all over 2. 1 plus 2/3 is going to be 5/3 divided by 2. We're going to take the square root of that, and it's negative. So this is going to become negative square root of 5/6, because 5/3 divided by 2, or 5/3 times 1/2, is 5/6. Both of these are under a square root. I don't want square roots in the denominator, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the square root of 6 to the top, which is 5 times 6 is 30. That leaves just the 6 on bottom, and we said our cosine is negative. Well, let's use our half angle identities to find the sine of half S. Well, the sine of half S is plus or minus, because it's a square root, 1 minus cosine S all over 2. Again, I know what cosine S is. Cosine S is 2/3. We are in quadrant number 2 where sine is positive, so I'm just going to keep my positive sign. So I'm going to do 1 minus 2/3 over 2. So 3/3 minus 2/3 is 1/3. I'm going to divide it by 2 or cut it in half, and that is going to be the square root of 1/6. Once again, I don't want square roots on the bottom, so I'm going to do 6 up on the top. That stays inside my square root, and I have the 6 outside of the square root on the bottom, and it's positive again because sine is positive in quadrant number 2. Now, we can find tangent one of 2 ways. I can use my half tangent formula, which we know are my half tangent identity, or you know what, simply let's do it a little simpler. The tangent of half S is the sine of half S over the cosine of half s. I'm saying half s instead of s over 2 because of my half angle identities. So sine, half of the sine of half s is radical 6 over 6 over negative radical 30 over 6. I don't divide with fractions. I just don't. I am going to multiply by the reciprocal. So these 6's are going to cancel out. So that's going to leave me with negative radical 6 over radical 30. They're both inside a radical, so I can reduce them. So I'm going to have negative 1 over radical 5. Of course, I hate radicals on the bottom, so I am going to move the radical to the top, and I am going to keep the 5 on the bottom. Alrighty, so that is example 8, where example 7, where I found the function values given one angle measure and what the cosine of it is. You can do that for any trig function. Well, let's simplify these. What simplify means we are going to work this out as much as we can. So I'm going to look at my trig identities, and I'm going to find the identity, the half angle identity at this point we should be looking at all of our identities. Which identity does this look like? Well, this looks like the half angle identity for cosine. Let me use the letter that we used in our notes. Half a, because the cosine of half a is plus or minus, which we got, over 1 plus the cosine of a all over 2. This is the identity I'm thinking I'm looking at. Well, because this is my cosine a right here, so we can see that a is equal to 12x. So we are going to find the cosine, 12x I said, not 12. We're going to find the cosine of 12x divided by 2, or half of 12x. So we are finding the cosine of 6x. That has been simplified. Well, what if we do tangents? Or this one? I'm sorry, I gave it away. I'm going to look at my identities. I'm going to try to figure out which identity this is. And this is the tangent half angle theorem. So the half angle identity for tangent says 1 minus the cosine of a over the sine of a. And we can see right here that a, the terms after the sine and the cosine, are 5 alpha. I'm not a good alpha drawer, as we already talked about in class. So let's go ahead and plug this into my half angle identity, because the left half is much simpler than the right half. So we're going to have the tangent of half, alpha over 2. That's just horrible. Let's fix that. This doesn't simplify anymore. So that is our answer. All right, so if you have any questions, make sure that you come prepared to class to ask them, and we will be getting together and doing some math work when next we see each other. I hope you have a great one, and I'll see you in class.